my feeling about the death sentence evolved over the years. I was the prosecutor many years ago up in Gary, Indiana. We had a lot of murders. We asked for and received the death sentence 17 times in 10 years that I was prosecutor up there. And so, of course, at that time, I was an advocate of the death sentence. I've since changed and evolved in this way. I don't know any longer if it's the right thing to do. Before I said it was. I'm not saying it's not the right thing, but I'm not sure. And that's a question I think a lot of people have in America today. Public opinion polls are showing whereas 20 years ago, 80% of the public favored the death sentence, now it's down to about 40%. And people have a lot of questions about this extreme penalty. It's the most important decision a prosecutor makes if you're talking about life or death. Certainly it's a very serious decision. First thing we would do as prosecutors, we would talk to the family of the victim and see how they felt about the issue. I think that's important. They suffered the greatest loss. Their loved one was murdered. So we talk to them and see how they felt, because it's a very long process. It's very tough on victims' families. They have to go through some 20 years of appeals and hearings, and a lot of times they don't want to have this resurrected in their mind time and time again. So we would talk with them and see how they felt. Then we would look at the facts of the case and try and see if we had a very strong case. Only the best, strongest cases should support the death penalty, because the jury can have absolutely no doubt in their mind about the defendant's guilt before they decide what kind of penalty is appropriate. And then we would look oftentimes at the nature of the crime. Were there more than one victims? I think if you have multiple victims, certainly that tilts you towards a higher sentence. We have enough individual murders, so there's no such thing as a typical murder, but when you've got 2 and 3 victims, I think that tends to sway a prosecutor towards the ultimate penalty. I definitely think I would look at a capital case differently now than I did some 20 years ago when I was prosecutor up in Gary, because of all these factors. One thing that struck me and troubled me as a prosecutor is that the statistics show a person who murders a Caucasian victim, a white person, is 10 times more likely to receive the death sentence than one who murders an African American victim. That's not right. I mean, that just jumps out at you. Why should the race? It's more the race of the victim that dictates the ultimate outcome in a death sentence case versus the race of the defendant.